Hello everyone, welcome to PyNet Labs. My name is Chirag and the purpose of this video is to help you guys understand how the flow is going to be there in the CCIE Enterprise Infrastructure training at PyNet Labs. So let's begin the discussion and let's try understanding how we are going to proceed with the content of CCIE in our upcoming trainings. So I would like to tell you guys that the whole CCIE content is broken down into 5 different modules here at PyNet Labs, and we'll be exploring them gradually one by one, and we'll get deeper and deeper into the concepts and protocols while our discussions through these 5 different modules. The very first module of the training will help you in grasping the core concepts of networking. For an example, in the very first module, we'll be having discussions related to things like switching concepts, routing protocols, tunneling concepts, security related concepts, and then network services. So these are, you can say, some major categories that we'll be looking at in the module number 1. We'll be getting into the details of topics later on in the discussion. But you can say, for an instance, let's say if I talk about switching concepts, this would include all the layer 2 protocols like CDP, LLDP, VLANs, inter-VLAN routing, spanning tree protocol, multiple spanning tree protocol, rapid spanning tree protocol, and their related features. For example, if I talk about how we'll be discussing these things in our training, then you can expect a discussion like this where there would be a, for example, let's say there would be a branch. Let's say this is my branch number 1 here, where I have some devices. I have the R1, R2, then I have some distribution layer switches. I have access layer switch and some end devices are connected. That's how my branch 1 looks like. So if I talk about spanning tree, we'll be building up the topology from the very scratch like this. We'll create a branch, we'll connect a couple of devices in a loop creating topology, or you can say in a redundant topology, and we'll observe the elections of spanning tree. Here we'll talk about the different versions of spanning tree. Then we will also integrate the same with ether channels by creating multiple links between the devices like this. Then further, to bring up routing between the branches, we will be using IGPs like OSPF, EIGRP. So you can say, here I'll connect these devices together. Then there will be another branch, let's say. So there's going to be another branch, branch number 2. Where again, I'll have some set of devices connected together. Some more LAN networks, some more end devices with some different case studies and different scenarios. So we might use some IGP protocol like OSPF here to bring up the connectivity. Then there are going to be a couple of more branches, branch number 3, similarly branch number 4, and there's going to be one ISP as well, which will help me in order to connect with the different sites that I have. Let's say this is my ISP. In this ISP, I'll connect some couple of devices like this. We'll connect them all together. And then gradually, when we get deeper into the discussions, we'll try understanding how we can connect them all together in a single area. Or let's say how we can divide the topology in multiple areas. In this situation, let's say I make this whole part as a member of single area number 10, let's say. Then similarly, if I want to build up some connectivity between different sites, if I want my branch number 1 to exchange routes with the branch number 2, I will connect my branch 1 with this particular ISP, I'll create a connection with the ISP provider edge devices. Then similarly, branch 2 would be connected to my ISP. And then between these sites, I'll be obviously using the border gateway protocol. Here we'll understand the working of IBGP, eBGP connections. We'll understand the different stages of neighborships, how the BGP neighborships are established. So all the basic discussions would be there in the, you can say, in the building of the lab. While we build it, while we integrate the branches together, while we create and configure these devices, all those things would be there. Similarly, along with my ISP, there's going to be multiple other ISPs as well. So along with this ISP, we can consider one more ISP helping me to provide a redundancy of internet connectivity. Then let's say there is also another data center. This is my data center where again I have multiple devices connected together. Let's say I have some switches, then some more routers connected in a redundant way like this. Then let's say there is another ISP, and one of the edge devices is connected to ISP2 and the another one is connected to ISP1. So we'll observe how we can do redistribution of routes. Let's say I get to learn about some BGP routes from this ISP here on my edge router. Then here we'll implement redistribution to observe that how the other layer 3 devices, these layer 3 switches, get to learn about those BGP routes. That's how we'll be using all these protocols gradually and from the basics to advanced levels to complete our whole topology and the discussions related to the CCIE content. In the module number 1, along with OSPF and BGP related discussion, there would be some other things as well, which we are going to get our hands on, like HSRP, VRRP, which are basically the first hop redundancy protocol. So for example, here in this scenario, when I talk about my branch number 2, we'll observe the working of HSRP or VRRP between these devices. We'll be creating some VLANs in which my PC number 1 and PC number 2 would be participating. So let's say for an instance, we'll be creating a VLAN number 100 here and a VLAN number 200 here. So we'll be using SVIs to make them communicate with each other. We'll be later on using HSRP as well so that they can get a redundancy for their gateway as well to go outside of their network. Similarly, there's going to be the configurations of NAT, where we will observe how the address translation works, the port address translation works. So in my data center, let's say if I want to go out of the data center and communicate with some other devices over the internet. So we'll be observing how on this edge router I can configure something like NAT or PAT to make that possible. Then there can be some more devices here in branch number 3, let's say. Now, depending upon my scenario, if let's say I'm given a task to make sure that certain routes don't get advertised into ISP. So how can I achieve that? I can achieve that using ACLs by deploying some ACLs here on the edge router, right? So we'll be observing the working of ACL here on this particular branch number 3. And step by step, we'll keep on, you can say, building the lab. We'll be keep on establishing the lab into greater complexities and greater cases when we proceed with the content of CCIE. Like I mentioned, initially we'll be discussing all these things at certain basic levels so that we can build the fundamentals in the module number 1. Once we have got the grasp of things, once we have got the understanding of these protocols like EIGRP, OSPF, multicast, switching concepts, then NAT, FHRP protocols. Once we have got the clarity on these things, we'll take things ahead to our module number 2, which will help us in exploring the advanced level depth of everything that we have learned in module number 1. Now in NRC, whatever you get to learn, those things are going to be there in module number 2. Along with that, there would be some additional discussions related to VRFs, related to route maps, related to BGP and everything. So let's see how the module number 2 is going to help us in establishing the lab a little more. Now, when I talk about the module number 2 that will be following in our training, it is going to inculcate more of tunneling. So you'll get to learn how your tunneling works, how your DMVPN works. So we'll be understanding and observing the different phases of DMVPN. Now let's observe. For an instance, let's say you have got some devices here, some more devices here in data center. You have a couple of more routers here connected with these devices. Let's say you have a router here like this, like this. Then you have another router here like this. Now this is going to be my hub here. Then these devices that I have on the branch, they'll be working as the spoke routers. So let's assume that this is one of my spoke router. This is another spoke router. This is another spoke router. So I will basically try understanding that how using this hub, I can create DMVPN and I can create a tunnel with the spoke number 1, spoke number 2, spoke number 3. And while doing this, we'll also be observing the different phases of DMVPN configurations. Similarly, after that, there's going to be discussions of MPLS. So for that, we'll be jumping onto the ISP site. Here we'll observe how MPLS can be utilized to transmit my packets on the basis of labels, not on the basis of the rib, right? Then similarly, the discussions related to, let's say, the IPsec tunnels or the GRE tunnels would be there in a particular training. Along with these things, in the module number 2, there's going to be discussions related to the routing protocols as well, a little in more depth than what you have already learned in the module number 1. Now, when I talk about more depth, we'll be observing the features of these routing protocols. So things like the named mode of EIGRP. Then not just that, like we'll not just get the clarity on what exactly named mode is all about, but we'll also understand what is the benefit of using that, right? Then how we can avoid stuck in active situations, how we can make sure that we shut down EIGRP gracefully if required, then how the stub works in EIGRP, all such things. Those would be there in the IGP protocol category, or you can say those would be there within these branches itself. So where we have OSPF, we'll try to, you can say, tune it a little more by using these features, by using a graceful shutdown, by observing different types of areas, by using features like prefix suppression, by understanding how the stub router works or how the different areas, NSS area, or your special areas work in OSPF category. Same goes with BGP as well. So where we have these BGP connections, we have the branch to ISP connectivity over BGP, eBGP. Here we'll talk more about BGP, how we can manipulate these decisions, how I can make sure that instead of ISP2, the connectivity that I have with ISP1 should be preferred in BGP. So this can be achieved by modifying the attributes, right? So we'll be observing such things here in the module number 2. Then the multicast configurations, the configurations and protocols related to multicasting would be discussed. Along with that, in module number 2, there's going to be a dedicated discussions on the IP services and security as well, where we talk about the different types of ACLs. Like in module 1, I told you about the ACL, the standard ACL, extended ACL that we use for filtering out the traffic. Here in module 2, we'll get more specific into the features like VLAN based ACLs, private ACLs, then how DHCP snooping can be used. Now, let's say we have a DHCP server working in the data center, and I want to make sure that I can avoid DHCP related attacks. So I want to enable DHCP snooping on one of the switches. So let's say on this one, I'll go and configure DHCP snooping. Then we'll be basically making sure that only the trusted interface provides us the offer messages. Similarly, we'll be observing the working of DHCP relay configurations, how your IP source guard can be enabled, how dynamic ARP inspection can be done, what is port security, how it can be enabled, how it can be how it can be used to make sure that only the valid devices are used. Then overall, when my packet transmits over one branch to the other, how QoS can help me to make that transmission better. Such discussions can be expected in the module number 2. Later on, once we are done with those things, we'll be jumping on to the module number 3, the SD-WAN concepts. Now for SD-WAN, we'll be again establishing the lab a little more by adding the SD-WAN related devices. Like I'll be connecting some controllers here in my data center. So we'll add my vManager, I'll add my vSmart, vBond here in my data center. And then by connecting them to these, you can say, devices, I'll be able to onboard my edge devices. Like I'll be using some of these devices as edge devices. I mean, these edge devices would be onboarded as the SD-WAN edge devices, and then later on we'll be managing these sites just by sitting at here on the DC and connecting to a management PC. Then there in SD-WAN, again, we'll be deploying the controller side, which is going to be nothing but my data center. We'll be deploying my branch sites like I have here, branch 1, branch 2, branch 3, branch 4. Then we'll also be observing different types of template related configurations, how network segmentation can be done using service VPNs, how policies, the central policies or the localized policies work in a setup of SD-WAN. Similarly, after we are done with the discussion of module 3, which is everything going to be related to SD-WAN, we'll be jumping on to SD access, where we'll be using DNA center. So we'll have a DNA center connected to our Eve topology, reachable from our Eve topology. And by deploying that, we'll be using that to configure the overlay and also to manage the fabric, to design the fabric, how single site or multi-site works, how the host onboarding works, how authentication works, how port configuration works. All such things we'll be exploring in our module number 4, which is going to be everything related to SD access. Then finally, we'll be also introducing automation into the environment. We'll ensure that whatever we have achieved, we'll try automating that. We'll try to use more of automation to achieve those configurations or to deploy those configurations. Again, for example, let's say we configure on my branch number 4, we configure some static routes here on the edge device. So let's say I don't want to use the CLI method to achieve that configuration. I want to deploy some script here on my PC so that the configurations of static routes can be done on the router by itself by using that particular script. So how can we achieve that? We'll be getting that discussion. Similarly, there are concepts related to APIs that can help us in managing controllers like the vManager, the DNA center. We'll be using and learning those API related concepts to deploy the configuration on such controllers. We'll be creating some templates. We'll get an introduction to Linux and some Python modules related to networking so that we can get the grasp of automation as well in this particular environment. So by the end of the training, we'll be having a complete complex environment where we'll be integrating and learning all these protocols and configurations. When you reach the end of the training, you can expect yourself to be capable of configuring all these protocols, which are there in the CCI content, onto a particular network scenario. So with me, step by step, in these discussions, you will get the grasp of all the protocols, as well as you will get your hands on a complicated lab scenario, which helps you in strategizing and preparing for your lab attempt. So I hope this gives you the idea about how the training is going to be in the upcoming schedules. So hoping to see you there. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.